that's a weird thing to text your daughter. I mean, I don't know. It'll be like, Dad.
How's it going?
Summer.
It's beautiful out here.
Dad.
I met the cowboy.
Summer.
Oh, him? He hates me.
Dad.
Giving him over. Just make sure he keeps his in his pants.
Hi everyone, it's Deb. I hope you're well. Today we are going to be doing the April wrap up. I cannot believe it's already a new month. I am so excited for May. For one, the sun. Hopefully we can be reading outside, having our almost summer era. And for two, I have got some really good books picked out for May, so I am so excited. But before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about April, because April was quite an interesting month. In the month of April, I did the whole TikTok picks my book. So I got 3 books that I read last month from that video. And I also had a buddy read. So I did a buddy read with Shuba and Sully, and we read Legendborn. And then I think I picked 1 book other than that. So I actually read 5.5 books in April. So I've not quite finished one of them. I was reading Cruel Prince towards the end of April, and that will probably roll on to, well, it will roll into May. But I'm really enjoying that book. So stay tuned for May's TBR to find out my thoughts on that one. But the other 5 books I have here, one of them is a ebook, Kindle book. I should probably buy it because I absolutely loved it. So that is not here, but one of them is on the Kindle. And then the rest of them I do have in paperback form. So I'm trying to figure out if we should go from worst to best or best to last. I think I'll start from worst to best, so we've got something to work towards, you know. I don't know if it will surprise some of you. It might surprise you, it might not. If you've been keeping up with me recently, then you probably won't be surprised. But the book I enjoyed the least this month is Flawless by Elsie Silver. Now, I'm not going to DNF the whole series. I will carry on. We'll see how many I get to, but I will at least read 1 or 2 more books in this series, because I have heard there are better books. But this book was a solid 2-star for me. There was just so many things I found really cringe, or just I didn't really buy into the romance of the characters. So, you know, when the book really relies on the romance and you don't buy into it, it's kind of like a recipe for disaster, right? You're never going to love the story if you don't buy into the characters. So maybe that's my disconnect. I didn't love Rhett or Summer, so maybe I just didn't love them, and therefore their love story was a bit meh to me. And I also found Summer's dad to be really weird. Like, he would text her things like, "Don't ride the cowboy, have you ridden the cowboy?" Or like, "Don't sleep with him." And I was like, that's a weird thing to text your daughter. I mean, I don't know if you can see it here. It'll be like, Dad.
How's it going?
Summer.
It's beautiful out here.
Dad.
I met the cowboy.
Summer.
Oh, him? He hates me.
Dad.
Giving him over. Just make sure he keeps his in his pants.
See? That is what I mean. I found that odd. I'm like, why does Summer's dad keep talking about this guy's parts? Like, that is not a conversation that I would expect to read between father and daughter. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm that weird. And just the whole premise in general, I was just a bit bored. I'm not sure if the cowboy romance is for me. Like, it might just be I'm not into cowboys. That could really be it, because I wasn't really bothered about his bull riding storyline. So the premise of the story, if anyone out there hasn't read this book, which I feel like is not going to be many of you, but basically Rhett is a bull rider and he's got a reputation for not getting on with the media. Summer works for her dad and they are in like PR. They represent these athletes and get them brand deals and just make them look good in the public eye. So because Rhett does something that gets him a lot of hate, Summer now has to babysit him. Her dad asks her to go and ensure that Rhett stays out of trouble, at least until his big tournament is over and they can cash in on some big brand deals. So Summer goes to Rhett's ranch or whatever and essentially has to babysit him and make sure he doesn't do anything stupid in the media or the public eye that will hinder his image. And Rhett hates that. He hates having a babysitter. He's like, what the heck, I'm a grown man, like what's going on? But of course, you know, it's a romance, so they start to fall for each other. And to be honest, like, yawn, just meh, that's so boring to me. I'm not into bull riders. I didn't get into it at all. I wasn't bothered about that storyline at all. I didn't really get Summer's storyline. Like, she was his agent, sort of, working for him, trying to get his image to work, and she started to realise how much she maybe isn't living life for herself, but is living for the expectations of the people. She has a sister that she doesn't get on with, or her mother-in-law. It just wasn't for me. The spice was all right. I just, meh. I could leave it. The next book I read was One by One by Freida Mcfadden. Now, I spoke about this book in my TikTok video where I got it as a surprise gift in the thriller category. So I won't go into too much depth about what it's about because you can see that there. But essentially, I gave this a 2.5 star. I found this book so easy to read. It's really short. You can get through it in no time. And it's also just a page turner. You want to know what's going on. You want to know what happens. And whilst I gave it a 2.5 star because it's just a bit silly, it was still fun. It's like watching a horror movie and you're shouting at the main character to not go in the haunted house, and they do it anyway. Like, you know they're making ridiculous decisions, but it's like you want to watch the fallout. You want to watch them fail because it's just hilarious. And it's kind of like that. Like, whilst there were parts where, I'll be honest, I was a bit scared, but it doesn't take much to scare me. So that's not saying much, to be honest. I would recommend this book for a quick read. If you're in a slump, you'll probably get out of it with this book. It was fun, it was quick, and it's basically, just in case you haven't watched my video, it's basically about a woman who's having marital issues with her husband, and they go on this trip with their friends to a remote location, and they're all in their car. The car breaks down, so they decide they'll venture through the woods with their paper map and compass to try and get to the cabin by foot. But one by one, they start mysteriously dying or disappearing, and you're left wondering what's going on, why are they dying, and who is killing them. The next book I read, I think I gave this a 3 star or a 3.5, but I think a 3 star is probably fair. So again, this was a book I got in the TikTok blind date surprise book, and this is called A Brush with Love by Mazey Eddings, and I had never read a book by this author before, and I found out later that this is actually her debut novel. And like I said in my previous video talking about this book, I really like the representation of anxiety in this book. I think it was really well done, and I really like how the author put a author's note with all of the trigger warnings before you read this book. I do think, based on the front cover, I would not have chosen to read this book at all. So I was really happy to read a book that I would not have chosen myself and enjoy it, because it was a good read. It was definitely a bit slow at times. It took me a bit of time to properly get invested, but once I did enjoy it. I also liked the main characters, and I think that's what was lacking in Flawless, was that I didn't like them. Like, I didn't care about them, where I care about these two. Their names are Dan and Harper. Is it Harper? Yes, Dan and Harper. And yeah, you just root for them. You really want them to get together and beat the obstacles, which are Harper's anxiety, Dan's got his own things going on as well, and just the pressure of education, really, and especially for Harper, how much pressure she puts on herself to perform well in dentistry is what is like the main problem keeping them apart. So whilst it's not the easiest read, because it has got the themes of anxiety and panic disorders, and even looks into sexism as well, it's still a really good read, and you probably will get through it relatively quickly. It's not too long. And yeah, I would recommend this book for anyone who likes academic reads, very, very strong, smart main characters, representation of all sorts of things, such as mental health and ethnicity and religion. You will probably like this book. So now that those books are out of the way, the next 2 books I read were a 5-star, and I was so happy to have 2 5-star reads this month, well, in April. The first one I want to tell you guys about is called The One by John Mars. Now, if you have watched this channel before, then you will know that I loved The Passengers by John Mars. I thought it was such a good book, and this book was just as good. I also listened to the audiobooks because his audiobooks are just so good. They have so many different actors and actresses that play the voices and really bring the characters to life. So before I waffle on about all of that, let me tell you what the premise actually is. As you're probably guessing, The One, it is about finding the one, right? However, this is no ordinary finding the one situation, because John Mars's books are typically sci-fi, right? They've got a sci-fi element to it. So it's not a romance book. There is romance in it, but it is mostly a sci-fi book. And essentially, the premise is that there is this service where you can get your DNA and you will find a match. And that match is destined to be someone that you fall in love with. Your DNA lines up in a way that your hormones just are drawn to each other and perfect. Or so you would hope. But John Mars kind of explores, would this actually be a good thing? Is having a match that you are genetically compatible with really good? And so he has got, I think, 5 different scenarios of what could happen in this world. So we've got a serial killer. We've got a serial killer who goes on match.com or whatever it is, find your match, I think it's called, and he gets a match. He gets matched with a police officer. I mean, if that is not gold, then I don't know what is. He is a serial killer, and when I tell you those scenes where he describes the murders or the states of their bodies is absolutely disgusting. Like, I actually felt sick sometimes reading his chapters because he's just a psychopath. Like, quite literally, he is a psychopathic character, and it was crazy to read, but very, very thrilling and very interesting to see how he navigates finding a match whilst also being a psychopath, because, you know, typically if you are a psychopath, you haven't got really much empathy, and the way you experience emotions are very different. And so we see that dynamic happen, and that was so interesting. It's also a scenario where, you know, perhaps your match doesn't even live in the same country as you, so you're on complete opposite ends of the world. And I don't want to tell you too much, because obviously part of the fun of reading the book is finding out the scenarios, but those 2 you find out quite quickly. And yeah, I don't want to spoil the rest because it is so interesting, but every character has such a unique storyline that you are just gobsmacked. Like, I was like, okay, oh wow. And it would happen so quickly. You'd be like, I'm enjoying this person's storyline more, this one's is okay, and then all of a sudden there'll be a plot twist for this character. And you're like, what? If you like fast-paced books, if you like sci-fi, if you like really interesting characters, if you like plot twists and just, you know, to be kept on your toes, and you will absolutely love The One by John Mars. So good. If you've watched the Netflix show, do not even think that they are the same, because the Netflix show was trash. It was not great. It was really not good. And I was so excited to read the book and then watch the show thinking they'd be similar. They're not. There are elements of it that are, you know, you can tell is from the book, but it is a completely different storyline and different characters. So if you have watched it on Netflix and you're thinking, oh, it wasn't great, don't you worry, the book is 10 times better. And last but not least, I read Legendborn. I mentioned earlier that this was a buddy read, and oh my gosh, I am so happy that I finally have gotten through this book. I'm not sure why, I just got intimidated when I saw it on my shelf because it is quite a thick one, and not only is it a bit thicker, it's also just got tiny writing. But I downloaded it on my Kindle and so I can make the text bigger, and that was great. And wow, I need to read the second book ASAP. I need to order it like today because this book was so good. First of all, I loved Bree, our main character. She is just phenomenal. She is so strong and so inspiring and just so complex, you know. She's gone through a lot in her life, the number one theme being grief. She is grieving her mother. Her mother has died and she has found it really hard to cope with that fact. So hard, in fact, that she can't really bear to be reminded of her mum at all, and she just finds it is easier for her to just start afresh in a college with her best friend through a program where she's really gifted and gets to go a little bit earlier because she is only, I think, 16 years old. So once she gets to this college, she finds out that there are odd things going on. And by odd, I mean there are demons. There are demons in this book. If you have watched The Shadowhunters on Netflix, it kind of is like that. You know how they're invisible to humans, but then the Shadowhunters can see them and hunt them. It's kind of a similar world in Legendborn. So Bree is confused. She's like, why can I see these demons and nobody else can? Except from a few people she realises also can. So she's trying to basically unravel the mystery that she thinks is behind her mum's death. And she thinks this whole demon world is the key to that. And so she tries to be a part of it. And that's what you do. You go on an adventure with her, trying to become a part of this secret group that can see and fight demons to hopefully get power to find out what happened to her mum. But we find out a lot more than that. So honestly, this book has got twists and turns. There's characters that you grow to like or grow to dislike, and a great read. So I need to read the second one as soon as possible. Those are all of the books that I read in April. I cannot wait to start my next month. I'm already starting off strong with The Cruel Prince, and I've got some more romantic books to read as well. I hope you all had an amazing month reading in April as well, and good luck for your TBR in May, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys.